sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the infinity gems. It is the middle ground between the big two, the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, The Church of Failure, and with me as always is my trusty co-host, Ayrton McCartney. How you doing tonight, buddy?
My back's still killing me, but hey, other than that, doing pretty good.
You need me to send somebody over to break your pinky? I think Uber offers that service now.
Do they? I was wondering when they were going to do that. I've been emailing them for years asking if they do that.
The God Voice intro, yep. No Rusty Cage intro. No, I just switched it up. I found some more copyright-free soft intro music. I figured I'd switch it up a little. I almost started with I'm Blue by Eiffel 65, I think. What's the name of the group? Whatever the blue song from the 90s was that everybody heard to death. But I'm pretty sure that would just get us copyright struck, and I don't want to do that. So, smash the like button. Yes, thank you,
drive
Danielle.
our listeners crazy.
Well, getting it stuck in your head for a week's not the worst thing that could happen, I guess.
I mean, just mentioning it's probably going to get it stuck in everybody's head for a week.
Also, can I say that I'm a little disappointed you didn't comment on my joke? I jumped in the chat and I said, "How goes it, gentlemen?" And Novel Bro. And he got it. He laughed. Volume's a bit low there.
I don't have that pulled up yet.
Let's see here. Is that anybody there? Let me know. Is that better? Is that worse? Is it the overall volume? Like, can you... Not mine, not Ayrton's. Okay. I upped my...
So we're just terrible today?
We are, absolutely. Every day. I mean, that's just kind of how we do it. But, that should have fixed the audio, but I don't know, maybe. I'll move my microphone a little closer to my face. Maybe that'll help.
Maybe.
Nobody's telling me in the chat. They're just leaving me out to dry. So I'm going to proceed as like everything's normal until someone tells me something. With that.
Yeah, we'll just keep going like this is going well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a hard time operating under the impression that I'm wrong. So, I just kind of roll through shit. Like the other day when we had no audio whatsoever, I was just like, what? Alright, Novel Bro says I'm sounding okay for him. Alright, you let me know, Matt, if
if Matt Christie says it sounds better.
Okay, good. Alright. So today, it's Monday, so as usual, I made Ayrton do something he didn't want to. And, listen to, or watch another episode of the Watchmen. So, first off, let's just answer the age-old question. I thought I was wrong once, and then I realized I made a mistake. So, anyway, as it is Monday, we're reviewing the new episode of The Watchmen because apparently that's Knox's thing to have us do. We really, I don't know, maybe we should have seen this coming. We'll set a Patreon goal the next time we hear that a terrible superhero show is about to come out, and we'll review it if we hit that goal.
That probably would have been smart.
But anyway, Watchmen episode 3. Something really strange happened today. I was watching this episode, and I realized that I actually kind of liked it. Um,
Were you high?
no, not at the time. I mean, afterwards, but I thought I liked it while I was sober, at least. Were you high? Are you questioning me? Respect my authority.
Just I don't know. It wasn't bad, like bad,
Well, in
like the other
comparison to the first
episodes,
two
but it still
episodes,
wasn't good.
I don't know. I actually kind of liked the way they did this one. Um,
I was bored the entire time.
well, this one actually ties together with the Watchmen mythos as a whole. Like this one actually kind of makes sense to have it in a show called Watchmen. Like you're introduced to a legacy character in a 30-year future. She's having
The racist detector.
Oh God, yeah. So what you're saying is that you're okay being tortured as long as you get paid for it. Well, isn't that what work is? I mean, isn't that why
I mean,
everybody like?
there's apparently that haunted house or whatever in Kentucky or Tennessee where you have to sign like a 40-page waiver, go through like a medical exam and all this other shit. But if you make it through it, you get like 20 grand.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, do they try to stab you in this haunted house?
Apparently it's a lot of psychological torture, but they'll also like you get like electrocuted and other like weird stuff like that. So it's kind of like torture.
You get electrocuted. Wait,
I don't know.
hold on. I don't give a shit what kind of waiver you sign. Like, if you electrocute somebody and they die, you're fucking liable. But getting back to my point, compared to the first two episodes, this one was actually decent. The premise of the episode, it really reminded me of Lost. Now, you said you didn't watch Lost?
I watched Lost until a point, and I don't remember what that point was exactly.
Danielle in the chat saying you have to pay 20 grand to go through. You don't get 20 grand.
No, you just have to. No, you just donate a bag of dog food to a local animal shelter.
What? Look, you guys can figure that out in the Discord or in the chat. I'm not getting in between that. I'm gonna take her word for it because she's a female, and I mean, you're you.
Is that sexism? That seems like sexism.
No, because I'm a guy too. I can only be sexist against women.
That's thin, but it's plausible.
No, man, it checks out. I wrote it down on a piece of paper. It's obviously valid.
Oh, okay. And you initialed it?
I did. I did in 3 different places. They were absolutely just completely, I don't know, random places. Like they had no rhyme or reason. But I did initial it in 3 places. And I printed and signed at the bottom. It's official. Somebody stamped a seal in the top left corner. I mean...
that makes me think of something that I thought would be funny to do.
What's that?
Just have random, like, strangers sign shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just random stuff, and then just sell them, just put it on eBay. Like this cast iron pot signed by John Doe, and just see if anybody bids on it.
Oh, man, no. No, I'm going to go get some drumsticks. I'm going to have you sign them. You have, like, the name that sounds like a musician. So I'm just going to get you to sign a bunch of drumsticks, and that's how we're going to fund the Gospel of Comics. We're just going to put a bunch of sets of signed drumsticks on there, and we're just going to put bid starting at, like, $600. I mean, I'm sure there are pictures of Hughes at
look
a
at
drum
that.
set, right?
I was correct.
Sorry, Ayrton was correct, but no one has ever finished. Ooh! How many people have died? Has anybody died?
I
But
don't know if anybody's died.
let's try and at least stay close to the topic. So, uh, episode 3. We don't have any visuals. Other reviews will use stills from the show or whatever. I figure we're on borrowed time anyway, even though we're a small channel. Like, as soon as something pops off and people take notice that we're here, they're gonna try and get rid of us. So, I don't really poke the bear too much. Okay, whatever. No, we're gonna close that. All right, whatever. Okay, fuck yourself. Okay, no. Accept. Done. Whatever. All right. I have notes. I have like 2.5 pages of notes.
Jeez.
What do you want from me?
What, are we professionals or something now?
Well, I mean, I am in this time at least, because like I said, I wanted to have kind of a good idea as to why I like this. So I just kind of went through and broke it down piece by piece, and I wanted to, I wanted to have something to kind of keep us on point so that we would at least get through everything that I thought was halfway important. And some things are going to loop back around to other things just because of the way the episode was filmed. Because, like I said, this is literally very much like an episode of Lost. There were flashbacks and flash forwards. I have a theory on the Ozymandias stuff. A couple of different theories, actually, and I wanted to get your take on it.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I actually took this seriously for once because I wasn't intoxicated when I put together the show. No death, but quite a few major life-altering injuries. Alright. So, the first thing I've got here is just a bullet point that says Laurie Blake. For the people that are watching, most of you probably caught our review of Watchmen, and you know that Laurie Jupiter, or Jessipic, or whatever the fuck her name is the Silk Spectre. Her father is revealed in the comic book to be Edward Blake, the comedian. The man who is accused of attempting to sexually assault her mother while they were in the Minutemen together. With that, you're introduced to her as FBI agent of the Anti-Vigilante Task Force, Laurie Blake. I assumed at this point that she was using Laurie Blake as a way to kind of disguise herself after the events of Watchmen, when superheroes were still outlawed, but, she sprung Rorschach from jail and all that other good shit. So, well, you find out later in the episode that, Keene, the mayor of Oklahoma, I guess.
Tulsa.
Yeah. He, because it's the governor of the state, the mayor of the city. I got it. I'm intelligent. He knows about Laurie's past. So, in knowing about her past, it doesn't make sense that she's using a fake identity, except for the fact that either she's hiding from something, or maybe he's the only one that knows about her past and can turn her in. It's also shown that, Night Owl's in jail?
Yeah, that part I didn't understand, but whatever.
Well, it's, 30 years in the future. I mean, a lot has happened. And
yeah, but both of them dyed their hair blonde and went to white picket fence it up at the end of Watchmen.
Well, psychologically speaking, if Laurie's anything like her mother, she has a hard time maintaining a relationship.
Mm.
Um, that's kind of shown later on in the episode when she sleeps with a much younger agent at the, at the hotel.
You know, after he knocks on her door, after she pulls out a giant blue dildo with a picture of her and
I,
Doctor
w-
Manhattan
I
in
was
the
gonna,
case.
I was gonna say we should start keeping a tally of how many episodes a penis or phallic-like object comes up. Because I think we're on a roll. I mean, we're at least 2 episodes in a row, possibly 3. No, no, because I Love
Of
Halloween
our
didn't have a
show or of
penis.
Watchmen?
Our show.
Oh, our show. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll just use the calendar like a tic-tac-toe board and try and connect a line of episodes where we talk about penises.
We should make a bingo card. We should make bingo cards that we can randomly send out to our viewers. And
Yeah.
like your free square will be like phallic
Mitch.
symbol / rape will be
Yep.
the free square.
Right. That's terrible. It wouldn't make it really free though, because there are episodes where neither one of those things come up, but not this episode.
Not lately.
Uh, but yeah, I actually had that on the card to talk about when it comes up. But yeah, what do you like? How do you, in comparison to the first 2 episodes, which I felt like could have been the first 2 episodes to any, like it could have been the first 2 episodes of Heroes season 5 for fuck's sake.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, again, it was like it wasn't as bad. I don't know. I thought it was a little bit boring. I mean, I
I
guess bringing Laurie back as far as like the legacy characters makes the most sense at this point.
well it
But the dialogue, like the writing for the dialogue, was still not the best.
well let's go through some of the major points, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts on why I think this one was a much better depiction of what a Watchmen TV show could and should be, maybe.
Yeah.
But let's just go down my list of notes here. I don't have a stack of papers to rattle. And I typed the list up today. Um, I have some cards I could like whiff in the microphone, but
I don't really have any paper close by either.
we've mentioned that she's involved or the head of a vigilante task force. Um, Part of the first scene where we're introduced to her, besides the fact that she's in a phone booth talking to Doctor Manhattan, like that's the opening scene of the book. Um, it actually ends up being the opening scene of the book, the opening scene of the episode. It actually ends up being the final scene of the episode, but it's intermittent throughout the entire episode, which is how I compare this to an episode of Lost. Um, Lost didn't stick to
Yeah.
and a lot of people talk about the writer strike and everything in regards to this, but I would also venture as far as to say that Lost in its original season, when it had no complications, the episodes had several different formats to them. Like there were episodes where you were mainly focused on the group as a whole. There were episodes that were mainly focused on, giving you the backstory and the current story of a character. And I'm starting to kind of feel that from these episodes. The first episode was very
Yeah.
similar to the opening episode of Lost, where the plane crash happens and, the Watchmen are attacked, like the cops are attacked, and then the detectives who have alter egos are all introduced and they're all badass. And then the the white hat, quote unquote, is eventually revealed to be killed at the end of the episode, supposedly by a disabled character who is first introduced to the 4-year-old during the 1921 Tulsa massacre. So everything's starting to weave together very similarly to the way it did in Lost. And the episodes are starting to take on different formats, very similar to the way Lost did. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. I still don't think the writing's that good, though.
No, absolutely not. The writing's not great, but at the same time, I'm a man of simple taste. So, in comparison to the previous 2 episodes, watching this episode with the introduction of Laurie Blake and given as much backstory about her character as we are, all of the Watchmen trapping in this episode made a lot more sense and felt a lot more organic because we're dealing with a legacy character, and her evolution as a character actually makes sense. Also, like Knox said in the Discord earlier, there's not as much quote-unquote SJW bullshit in this episode as there was in previous.
There's still enough to kind of get under my skin, though.
Really?
But we'll get to that.
Okay. Well, bring it up when you see, because I didn't really get that vibe in this episode. But again, I was doing other things while I was watching it, so I may have just kind of missed it if it was just on screen or if it was in passing.
Yeah, it's just kind of the way they'll like during the funeral bit with the 7th Cavalry guy. Like that was a little bit like okay, but it definitely wasn't as bad as other episodes.
Right. Well, I do have a note on that, so we'll talk about that when we get there.
But yeah, we'll get to that part.
But the whole flashback and flash forward scene that's actually taking place chronologically at the end of the episode is Laurie telling a joke into a recording device that sends messages to Dr. Manhattan. So she starts up by telling a joke about the bricklayer and his daughter. And the master craftsman bricklayer is making a barbecue pit or something like that. And he comes up 1 brick over. Like 1 brick left over. So his little girl is just like, okay, well, that doesn't matter, and throws the brick up into the air. And she's like, oh, fuck, I messed it up. Wait, I've got a better joke. And she starts telling another joke.
That was one thing. I don't understand the Mars phone booth thing.
I think she kind
like
of
who else is on Mars that somebody would be calling?
No.
Like, can anybody call Dr. Manhattan?
Yeah, you can. Anybody can go in. I think it's expressed that you have to have some kind of membership or whatever because it calls Laurie a platinum member or whatever. So maybe not just anybody. Maybe there's some kind of process you have to go through, or maybe you have to pay a certain amount. It's essentially a tourist trap, I feel like, right?
Okay.
I mean,
I just thought it was weird.
It doesn't.
Like there's just a random phone booth in this town that you can call Dr. Manhattan from.
If you suspend your disbelief, if you suspend your disbelief enough to believe that there's a blue godlike entity living on Mars who has potentially created life, then, I mean, I feel like you can suspend your disbelief to feel like that instead of those penny roller machines where it impresses a penny in a press, they have phone booths to Mars.
See, I feel like, though, that if they did have one of those penny press things, the image would be
Dr.
like,
Manhattan's junk.
Yeah. and
Speaking of which,
that all of our listeners would just be sending me those.
well, let's just take a moment and appreciate the name of this episode. She was killed by space junk.
Yeah, I was waiting for what happened at the end, apparently, but I was waiting for like a satellite to fall out of orbit and kill somebody.
Well, they play a Devo song called Space Junk in the episode, which is apparently one of Laurie's like musical choices from the '80s. So that's like a time period callback.
Yeah.
But one thing that I took away from the opening of the episode where she's telling the joke is that she is embracing the fact that Edward Blake, the comedian, was her father. Because, first off, she tells a joke about a master craftsman bricklayer and his daughter that she ties back around later on to her being the daughter that threw the brick up into the air when she completes the joke, right? So that's obviously an allegory for herself and her father. Well, what father did she have that she picked up the craft from? Eddie Blake. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole, like, everything about what they're doing with this scene, I actually appreciate in the sense that it's a woman who's supposed to be Silk Spectre from the Watchmen series. And she's 30 years older. She's still pining for her lost love, Dr. Manhattan. Night Owl, who was basically her rebound, is in jail. She's taken on her bastard father's last name, and she starts the episode out by telling a joke. That's not coincidental. I mean, that's decent writing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the parts with her were definitely better, like when it was focusing just on Laurie. I think that
Right.
partially has to do with the actress who's playing her too.
And I will agree with you on that. Like the interaction that she has with Angela, aka Sister Night or Night Sister or whatever. Um, those scenes are a lot weaker than the individual scenes or the scenes that focus on her as a developing character. But
Yeah.
anyway, I really appreciate the fact that they did the whole joke thing. Like that joke montage really kind of sets the episode up for me, and I like that. But moving on.
So, like
Um,
where she is as a character.
Yeah. Well, in a scene later on in the episode, you see a Warhol style painting in the background of the scene, and the heroes portrayed in this Warhol painting are all of the heroes that are featured in Laurie's second joke. She's basically telling a metaphor of three heroes, and those three heroes are Night Owl, Ozymandias, and Dr. Manhattan. So those are the three heroes that we can see, even though her head is framed as blocking out the last panel of the four-panel Warhol painting of the Watchmen. And I don't know. I like Warhol. I don't know if this implies that Warhol is like still alive and making paintings in this universe, or if this was something that was done in the '80s. But I like that, and I like the fact that as she finishes the joke, like as the timeline progresses, that scene expands to show that she is the fourth character in that painting, and that she's the final character in the joke that she's telling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's little stuff like that. Like the fact that she's in this makes all of these homages and like little inserts just it actually makes it good to watch for me. Like I actually enjoy looking at these things when the episode actually feels like an episode of a show that should be called Watchmen.
Yeah, it's definitely better. I still don't think it was great,
No,
but
no,
it was
I'm
definitely
not trying
better.
to convince you that it is. I'm just trying to actually stimulate discussion about it. Like, just,
Yeah,
you know, the things that I'm bringing up, I just want your opinion on. Like, you can feel free to disagree with me or actually just kind of break it down in the way you took it and the reason you didn't like it. These are just things that I have written down that, I noticed, and the fact that I noticed them and actually could appreciate them meant that there was something different about this episode than the previous two that we've watched. And again, I
yeah. I
think
mean,
it.
honestly, I'm more curious just to hear you go through and talk through these reasonings.
All right, well,
Because I mean, me just overall, I just thought it was kind of boring, and some parts, mostly the whole funeral scene in general, I just didn't like at all.
I,
I thought it
I,
was just stupid.
well, I agree with you there, and I've got some notes on that, but that's on page 2, and we're only
Okay.
about halfway down
Yeah.
page 1.
Yeah. That, like, I was fine with the majority of the episode until that funeral scene. I was just like, this is retarded.
I'll just kind of glaze over this one because we've already basically talked about it, but the pet owl I thought was pretty cool because obviously that's an homage to Night Owl, the character. And then when that character is introduced, the owl, whose name is literally Who, Who. Um,
Which, if I had a pet owl,
yeah,
that is a pretty good name for a pet owl.
right.
Besides,
But
like, Marvin or something like that.
no, I think Who's better than Marvin. Um, if you had two owls, you could name them left and right, and walk around and tell all your friends that you named your Hooters left and right. That's that's still a thing, right? But the owl is introduced as Who while Laurie is talking to Mayor Keene, and we're shown that Keene is continuing his plan to run for president, and he's offering Laurie a pardon for what she's done. Kind of inferencing that he knows something about it. And as
Yeah.
is talked about later in the episode, which we can either talk about when we get there, or we can talk about it now, but it kind of gives me the sense that the mayor's like a shithead, right?
A little bit.
I mean, you feel like the mayor probably has ties to this white supremacist cult, or maybe something more nefarious later on down the line. Maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely some sleaze about him.
Right.
Like, he's definitely a dickhead.
And based on the last episode, we're still kind of weary of trusting that Captain Judd, the police captain, was a decent human being. Because, obviously there's Klan robes in his closet. It's implied that his father was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. There's a strong implication that Captain Judd is working in coordination with the 7th Cavalry, right?
Yeah, or at least implied that there's some sort of at least loose connection.
Right.
Maybe not that direct, but he's kind of doing. There's some strings being pulled in the background by some powerful people.
Right, and he's saying that if Laurie goes and quells the, what do they call it, unrest in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and if Keene makes it for president, which are two kind of big ifs, right?
Yeah.
He will pardon her for her crimes as a vigilante, which I assume is breaking Rorschach out of prison and anything she may have done with Dan after they changed their name and went on the lam. Um, Now, based on this, and based on what we find out at the end of the episode, where she's like, we're not worth noticing or caring about, talking about humans as a whole. Um, Based on everything that we learn about Lori, when you think about this particular point, it makes me wonder: is her being a member of the anti-vigilante task force and seemingly taking such pleasure out of, trapping vigilantes and superheroes and arresting them or whatever, is that like a self-loathing thing because of her time and her mother's time as a superhero? Or does she hate vigilantes because of her time and interaction with the Watchmen as a group and her time with Dan and her relationship with John, everything she went through with Rorschach and the deal with her father and her mother? Like, does she just hate capes because of who they are or because of who she was? And stuff like that, you kind of realize that she has a sense of self-loathing and low self-worth when she sleeps with a younger, almost intern that she took on this trip with her. And she's carrying around a briefcase with a Dr. Manhattan dildo in it. The combination to the briefcase of which is 666, another homage to Pulp Fiction. Um, this is also one of the few episodes that has a lot of homages to current and classical media, besides Black Oklahoma, of course. Because you've got, you've got the song at the funeral that Sister Night starts to sing. Got a note about it. What was it? It was from like a 1941 movie.
Was it? It sounded familiar. I couldn't quite place it though.
Yeah, let's see. I'll just highlight. Okay. At the funeral, Angela sings the last roundup from 1941 film The Singing Hill. So, and the code that Blake enters on her briefcase is 666, which it cuts away at 665, but that's an homage to the shot of Pulp Fiction where John Travolta is opening up the briefcase. The briefcase is shown to contain a Dr. Manhattan pleasure device, which obviously is a dildo. A very large dildo. Never your dildo.
Yeah, and there's like a weird like bit coming off the side of it or something.
No, wasn't that the ball attachment?
Is that what that was?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. It was shaped funny.
What's a dildo
That's all I
supposed?
remember about it.
Well, since you're such an expert, what's a dildo supposed to be shaped like,
it didn't,
sir?
It didn't look like your standard like run of the mill penis. It had like an odd like contour to it, for lack of a better term.
I didn't look at it that hard, buddy. But anyway, another thing that I noticed first off, there's a sting by the FBI in a national bank company bank, which, if you remember from the first episode, is the bank that employed Dollar Bill. So that's another kind of tie-in there. and the sting operation lures out like a Batman wannabe. Like, quite literally, this guy is almost identical to the fake Batman in The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be
Oh, I guess
surprised
you're
if he
right.
had
That
been.
is just a ball attachment.
Yeah. I'm just.
I only
Oh,
really when it's in the case and like, why are the balls detached and off to the side?
well, I
That's
mean,
weird.
because Dr. Manhattan could do that. I mean, she wants the full experience.
That's fair. That's fair.
She could put the ball part in her mouth, and I'm done. I'm not talking about this anymore.
Are you gonna continue with that? Various reasons why the balls should be able to detach from the dildo. I'm curious now. What other ideas you have about that?
Well, I disavow myself and this show. I will fire you. But the National Bank showing up in this is not the only callback to the Minutemen and the Watchmen. We see an advertisement that features the face of probably the comedian and Captain Liberty, I think. But you see a reference to the Black Freighter, which is the in-universe comic, in the Black Freighter Inn motel that the FBI agents are staying in. You see a reference to the Black Freighter in a Jolly Roger that appears during the Ozymandias segment. And I've got a theory about the Ozymandias segment when we get to that too.
All right.
But there's a lot of little tie-in, like, world building pieces in this episode. And again, it just feels better that these are in an episode with a legacy character in it. Because if you're going to do a sequel to a story, you have to be grounded in something. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like they're going to try and do that by the end of the season by making, Angela the descendant of one of the Watchmen somehow, right? Like, you kind of
Well,
have to,
but
don't you?
yeah, well, yeah. Who would it be though? Because the old man in the wheelchair.
Is her grandfather.
Yeah. So, like, who in the Watchmen?
Right, but the thing is people in the people in the Reddit and the sub forums of this TV show make it out to believe that Will is the original Hooded Justice.
Okay.
I mean, I don't necessarily buy into that, but if you do, then that gives you a direct legacy passed down. Her father could have been Dollar Bill because he was depicted as a black man on the advertisement for the National Bank Company that we saw, even though it seemed like racial propaganda. It very well could be meant to imply that Dollar Bill was actually a black man as well. So you could have Hooded Justice and Dollar Bill both being in the family line of Sister Knight, who has a striking similarity to Hooded Justice in her costume.
Okay. Could, so the Minutemen, then not the Watchmen.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'll give you that.
Yeah,
But
because I was thinking of the Watchmen characters. I was like, which one could she be related to?
but anyway, during the sting
Yeah.
operation where they capture and arrest the discount Batman, one of the agents is in the background reading a paper talking about Supreme Court Justice Grisham, and supposedly that's John Grisham, the espionage novel writer. Which, I'm wondering if these are just shout outs to cultural references that the creators enjoy. But it just seems weird that you're referencing like Andy Warhol and John Grisham when they didn't really have any kind of tie to the Watchmen to begin with. So those are a couple of like
Yeah.
things that I picked up that I didn't really understand. But um, let's see. Blake's disdain for vigilantes, possibly stemming from her time with the Watchmen and being involved with Dr. Manhattan, is further explored with Angela once she gets to Oklahoma. I've got more on that later written down. Laurie Blake is shown Devo Space Junk. We've talked about that. 666, the code on the briefcase. All right, page 2. During the briefing after the bust, there's the page and the cover of the Rorschach Journal shown. The cover
Yeah.
is a parody for a book called the Turner Diaries, which is an actual racist white nationalist manifesto written by Andrew MacDonald. I thought that was interesting.
I still want to. I still don't buy into the connection of
No, I don't either.
Rorschach being used as white supremacists. That's still highly annoying. But
No, I don't. I don't buy into the fact that Rorschach's journal could be a manifesto for white supremacy unless the text was altered, which it obviously was when you listen to their recitements.
yeah,
Um, Agent Blake chooses to take the young agent named Petey with her. Petey is, again, I'll agree with Ayrton on this one. Petey is a very boring character. He has a couple of memorable moments in the episode. On the jet to Oklahoma, he comments on Laurie Blake wearing a sleeping mask by showing the fact that he has a domino mask that he has brought with him, saying that he figures if the cops in the area wear a mask, he should, look the part. And this is kind of where you get another expression that, she does not like the fact that there are masked police officers, which is later expressed when she asks Angela, who has basically said, "Oh, I'm no longer a cop," trying to keep her own guys up without realizing that this woman knows that she's Sister Knight. But she asks Angela what the difference between a masked cop and a masked vigilante is. And when Angela says she doesn't know, Laurie's like, well, me neither. Um, Anything on that?
yeah. I mean, it's definitely nice to see like a major character call out the cops for being cucks and wearing masks.
Right. And, if you remember during the episode where we talked about episode 1 of the series, one of the main things that I said is that, all the reviewers that I looked up when I was getting ready to review this episode, everybody that had written a review on it said that they had access to 5 to 6 episodes and that the show would eventually start to subvert your expectations no matter what they were going into it. I didn't really believe that. I thought that was just a bunch of like mumbo jumbo lingo. But this episode actually introduces a character that I root for because she gets in all of these mass cop shit. Before that, though,
Yeah, I did enjoy that.
right. And before we get into that, though, I do want to point out that there were a lot of emphasis placed on scenery shots in this episode. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but even out by like the Black Freighter Inn, during the flight, and during the meeting They showed like the Washington Monument, the Millennium Clock, and something that looked like a giant, mega city hotel or whatever from 2000 AD in the background of the inn.
Hmm.
But they placed a lot of emphasis on those three shots. So I don't know if those are future sites that'll be paid off. I don't know if those buildings are supposed to be significant or if they were just trying to highlight the change in 30 years or the change between our dimension and this dimension. But it seemed important, so I wrote it down.
Fair enough. The Millennium Clock thing was kind of cool looking.
Well, it looked like a Dr. Manhattan thing from Mars, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like it was some sort of invention that he sent down to Earth or something like that.
right. And obviously, it works with the clock motif of Watchmen, with the nuclear threat being represented by a clock with several minutes to or from midnight. Um,
Yeah.
Once Laurie Blake arrived in Oklahoma, one of her first actions was to seek out the crime scene of Captain Judd's killing, and she discovered the wheelchair tracks and the mannequin in Captain Judd's home. And then she confronts Red Scare and Pirate Jenny looking for Looking Glass. Now, was it just me, or did she seem like she had some kind of familiarity with Looking Glass? Because, I mean, obviously she knew his name, but that can just be chalked up to FBI having records on everybody, right?
Right.
But to
She
me,
does seem to know stuff that she shouldn't, even being FBI.
well, let's take a look at Looking Glass as a character for a minute, right? Um, so far, he's like the closest Rorschach type character that we've been introduced to. Even going so far as to leaving his mask on in the privacy of his own home while he eats dinner and watches television.
Yeah.
But he's taken his mask off on 2 occasions completely, or shown his face completely on 2 occasions. Once to talk face to face with Captain Judd, and once to talk face to face with this FBI agent. I think that signifies some sort of fear or respect or something with his character, because it's obviously important that he takes his mask off at those points in time and not at others, because they made a point to show us that he doesn't even take his mask off to eat in the privacy of his own home.
Yeah.
He eats like Rorschach did in the comic book simply by lifting the mask up over his nose.
Which is way more entertaining when Rorschach just ate cold beans out of a can.
Yes.
But
I like the fact that Looking Glass put nuts in his mouth. That was kind of funny. But she started talking.
it kind of seemed with him and his mask. Besides just a callback to Rorschach, it kind of how you always hear the stories about like cops getting like drunk with power and that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
That's kind of what I think they're going with it. Like the mask makes him feel like even more powerful as a authority figure, and so he's like addicted to that like feeling of power, and that's why he wears it all the time. So the reason he would take it show his face all the way would be, to his boss or someone who's equally as intimidating over him. And like I said, the whoever this woman is who plays Laurie definitely has
a commanding
presence. Much better presence than anybody else in the show does. And yeah, she definitely has a very intimidating, commanding sort of presence, like someone who's seen some shit. So that's kind of the vibe I get from uh, that character, Looking Glass. I'm so bad at character names. But this, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I had my microphone muted.
Uh,
I said you guys
oh,
are gonna have to excuse me. My nose is stopped up. I was blowing my nose. That's why I muted the microphone. And Ayrton and
I
I are
was
both.
making sure my connection didn't drop it like
Yeah.
it has in the past.
Well, Ayrton and I are both dying, but we both watched the episode and we're
Yeah.
doing this for you guys. Depending on what we end up getting off into, we may end the show just a little bit early tonight. But we will definitely finish getting through this review and catching up with the chat and discussing this in detail. But we are almost done with page 2. Um, the reason I brought that up was because once Looking Glass unmasked and Laurie started talking to him, he started to seem really uneasy. And this is also the
Yeah.
scene where you get the quote of her calling the pod a racist detector. To which he responded with something like, it exposes prejudice that otherwise wouldn't be known or some shit like that.
Yeah, it's a stupid line,
Yeah.
but
But, Lori makes mention that the fact that during the autopsy of Captain Judd, the funeral happens very quickly, and that no toxicology report was taken. Now, in episode 2, Looking Glass confronts Angela, and she says he had a couple of glasses of wine, maybe a hit a blow or something like that. And we're left to infer that they hurried the funeral along to avoid people finding out that those things were in his system when he died, right?
yeah.
So,
Which, like, that would matter. Like, you can't accidentally hang yourself because you had alcohol and cocaine in your system.
right, but I mean, if you had a legacy to leave behind, like a law enforcement officer, like it would discredit a lot of your arrests and, probably call some of your cases into question. That's
True,
the meme at least, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it still doesn't, you know, give much effect to the way you died. If someone made it look like a car crash, then sure, that would make sense. But the fact that he was hung from a tree, I don't think you're going to accidentally do that to yourself after a few glasses of wine and a quick bump of cocaine to get through a tedious dinner party.
Well,
Because come on, haven't we all been at some sort of dinner party where you're like, oh, this sucks. I wish there were drugs here.
I've never been to a dinner party without drugs. I don't know what kind of life you're living, but it's not your best one. But no.
I sleep on amount of cocaine.
Oh, okay. Face down.
Like I've it like formed into the rough shape of like a bed.
Oh, okay. And it just contours to you, and you just stick a straw in your nose
Yeah,
before you go
exactly.
to sleep.
Yeah, it's like, those mattresses where you can stick the wine glass on them and jump up and down.
Yeah.
And the wine glass stays there.
Right.
It's like the same thing, but it's
made
powder.
made out of cocaine, and so is the wine
Yeah.
glass.
Exactly.
And the bowling ball that you drop on it, also made of cocaine.
Yes. It makes you think you're a really good bowler.
Yes, it does. But this is just before the funeral. Now, do we want to finish up the funeral scene before we talk about Ozymandias?
Yeah, it would be. I think we would get lost in our own thoughts trying to jump back and forth the way
Okay.
this episode does.
Okay. Well, we've already talked about the song that Angela sings. Obviously, she is very close to the Judd family, and Keen is also very close to the Judd family. And you're starting to kind of notice that these threads are starting to overlap a little bit. Like Keen and Laurie Blake have a relationship based on his political leanings and his, political escalation and ability to pardon her.
Yeah.
Keen has a relationship with the Judds, and it's insinuated, I feel like it's insinuated in the episode that Keen and the Judds were both involved with the 7th Cavalry and or the KKK.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something there. Well, I guess we should talk about the actual funeral scene before we talk about his press conference afterwards.
Right. Well, I figured we'd talk about the press conference and everything after Ozymandias because the scene was over by the time all that took place. But the funeral is interrupted by, obviously, a member of the 7th Cavalry running up and taking Mayor Keen hostage, strapped to a suicide bomb that we saw them making in episode 2 with the lithium batteries they were taking out of watches, I think. Like, that was all one thing, right? Like, they were using lithium batteries to make explosives.
Is that the connection?
I think.
I mean,
I can't understand why it was important they were picking batteries out of watches except for the Watchmen motif. Like, that just seems really weak based on everything.
Yeah, I mean,
like, the difference is, we talked about every piece of Watchmen trapping in episode 1. Episode 2, I feel like, wasn't as good as episode 1. This episode, I feel like, was a completely different show. But, anyway.
Yeah, I don't really see the connection to the lithium-ion batteries and a suicide vest.
Well, for some reason, I feel like they were related.
To make... Yeah, I mean, they might have some loose relation, but...
because it's implied that the lithium batteries were Manhattan technology instead of standard technology, right?
Were they?
I think so. Like, everybody's kind of shied away from using technology in this universe because of Dr. Manhattan, including, like, lithium batteries or batteries that were made in place of lithium batteries because of Dr. Manhattan. I could be completely off base, but I feel like that's the only way you can tie
I don't know, that whole battery thing was just so confusing and like out of left field.
And it could just be me trying to rationalize it, but I think that the batteries had something to do with the bomb, because first you're introduced to them gathering batteries. Second, you're introduced to them fixing a vest. And third, you're introduced to them wearing the vest. It seems like pretty straightforward storytelling to me.
Yeah, but lithium, like, it's volatile, but it's not like that. It's not like dynamite.
What if it was made with particles developed by Dr. Manhattan?
Well, it's still lithium, lithium as an element.
Right, but the thing is, what if it was enhanced by Dr. Manhattan and is much more volatile for the simple fact that it's made to last a lifetime and then another generation instead of lasting 5 years?
Yeah. Yeah, it would definitely have... It would definitely have more potential energy if it was enhanced like that.
And again, that's just
but
me
like
spitballing,
lithium as it is now is pretty... Yeah. Yeah, I'm taking them as like lithium batteries like what we have now.
Right,
which
but I mean, I
aren't
think.
that efficient and don't really
Well,
produce that much power.
well, let me
Relatively speaking, lithium's not that great of a power converter.
let me play devil's advocate here for as far as the story goes. Everything that they've mentioned in this story, the Andy Warhol painting in 2020 or whatever, 2019, the newspaper showing that John Grisham is in the Supreme Court supposedly, the Rorschach Manifesto being a book that supposedly took the place of the Turner Diaries. The Time magazine they show in Laurie's possession where Laurie and John had just started dating. Uh, Everything in this universe is shown. Nixon's head being on Mount Rushmore is all shown to intentionally make us perceive that this world, while similar, is much different than ours, right?
Yeah.
So it's not so far-fetched to think that lithium batteries would be much different.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. I'm more intrigued by the thought of it being enhanced by Dr. Manhattan more than it just being different because it's different.
Right. Well, the reason that I went through that whole diatribe was basically to say, in the grand scheme of things, I've already suspended my disbelief this much. How much of a stretch is it to go that much further to think that they were using the lithium batteries to make some sort of bomb?
Yeah.
I
I will say though,
logically that
it would be hilarious. Not if we put Nixon's head on Rushmore, but we should definitely put Trump.
Choo choo, Trump
Rushmore.
train.
Just just to forever piss everybody off.
Oh yeah, forever.
It would be wonderful.
How long before someone got arrested for trying to sabotage the Rock, trying to chisel off his hair or his nose or some shit?
7 hours.
Just long enough for the press and the crowd to disperse.
Exactly.
But anyway, this guy shows up with a suicide bomb, takes Keen as a hostage. He threatens that if anything is to happen to him, the bomb will detonate because it's linked to his heart. And then,
and you skip over him calling Keen a race traitor and all this other white supremacist jargon that nobody actually says.
Here's the thing. We've already accepted that these guys are, textbook white supremacists. I mean, they're the alt-right. I mean, they are gamers who have risen up, and if we just accept
retards rise up.
If we have accepted that, and that's the area we're going to, then I'm not gonna pinpoint it because again, I've lived in the South pretty much my whole life except that summer I spent in Ohio. And gotta say, I mean, not that it doesn't happen. I know that it does. I'm sure that actual hate crimes exist. I'm not denouncing that. I'm just saying, it's literally not on every street corner. Unlike crack,
right?
Which absolutely is on every street corner. But
it's almost like it's almost like nobody actually cares about you.
I mean, no, it's not
right?
that. It's just that the stereotypical neo-Nazi kind of went out of fashion in the 80s. Now, if you want to find a racist, typically they're at a country club with other racists playing golf in their golf clothes. They're not.
Or,
They're not
or
plotting
maybe Big
lynchings,
Con.
and no, they're not.
What?
They're no, they're not. They're not plotting lynchings or doing
Yeah.
any kind of hate crimes whatsoever. They're drinking too many beers on the eighth hole and barely making it through the course by the end of the day on an empty stomach. To yeah, that's where your traditional racism is these days, guys. It's all these executives and CEOs that are spending a lot of money on woke entertainment. But that's a topic for another day and probably another channel. But anyway, Lori, fed up with this guy's bullshit, basically pulls her dick out and shoots the guy in the head while he's holding the mayor like hostage. And then the beeping of the bomb like increases. So we're led to believe that the timer is now like ticking down faster instead of the bomb being wired to go off when it recognizes its heart has stopped.
Yeah, wouldn't that make more sense? Because
It,
that's what
it
he said. He's
yeah
like, this is wired to go off if my heart stops. Not the timer is wired to go off if my heart stops, and you have 38 seconds to get away.
yeah. You have 38 seconds to pull me in a grave and shove a coffin with a dead body on top of me, which is exactly what happens in the episode.
Why shove the coffin? You're down in a 6-foot hole. It's not the explosion's not going to kill anybody. Just don't be around the hole at that point.
Well,
The explosion's just going to shoot up. That's basic physics. It's not going to shoot. It can't shoot out. You're in a hole.
well,
Everybody would have been fine. She didn't have to. If anything, shoving the coffin in the hole made the explosion more dangerous because it created more debris to go flying and possibly land on people and injure them. You dumb bitch.
Yes.
Anyways.
I appreciate that from you. I like it when you go off like I do sometimes. It means you're learning.
Like, seriously, has this lady never watched an episode of Mythbusters?
I think she has. I don't think you're seeing the full the full Monty here. It was foreshadowed earlier in the episode that the FBI wanted to take a toxicology report from Captain Judd. And then at the end of the episode, it was explained that she planned to exhume the body the day after it was buried, discreetly, and then do a toxicology test on it. Well, it's implied that Angela knew, maybe from a heads up from Looking Glass, that this was talked about, and she saw an opportunity to Superman a dead corpse with the suicide bomb going off into a grave, and then He-Man tackling a, coffin. Is it a coffin or a casket? It's a casket. A coffin has the shape.
Yeah, I think that's a casket.
Yeah, a coffin has a shape and a lid. A casket has a hinge and is rectangular. But anyway, yeah, she defies physics and nature and somehow survives by dropping a terrorist into a grave and then dumping her deceased white supremacist boss friend on top of the bomb, creating a much more dangerous bomb, but also destroying the evidence before the FBI can do a toxicology report and expose the captain for being intoxicated and on narcotics the night that he died. It's also implied later on that Angela has stolen the KKK robes out of his closet. Like she had done that. She did steal them?
Yeah.
I didn't know that she had stolen them. I thought she had just discovered them and left them there.
Yeah, well, remember when she goes back to the old dude in the wheelchair where she has him locked up in that bakery, and she's like, yeah, you said he has skeletons in his closet, so I checked his closet and I found this, and she pulls it out of her bag.
Oh, right, yeah. See, again, I didn't like the second episode. I liked this episode.
Me either.
But anyway, during or after all this funeral shit, we kind of cut over to Vike. right? And he's testing some kind of
Yes.
suit, which we're kind of shown has something to do with the catapult.
Yeah, actually, I kind of missed what actually happened with the suit because I had to go up to get my food out of the oven.
The
I
court,
came back and the
well,
and the guy's face was frozen and Vite was kicking him
yeah,
and calling him a bastard or whatever.
that's what happened.
I
The
don't know
cat.
what led up to that. I saw him getting the suit put on. I went and grabbed my food. I came back. Vite was kicking him in the face.
From what I understand, he was launched from the catapult after his oxygen and everything was turned on, and then he came back frozen and dead.
Okay.
And because he's a Phillips clone, Vike was just abusing the corpse because that's what he does. Now, from this, he goes back inside all pissed off, right?
Right.
Like, kind of deranged and going, it needs thicker skin or whatever. So he goes back inside, and his male and female, like butler and maid servants, are inside with a cake that has 3 candles on it. And it's at this point that I'm starting to think that these are years that are separating in between these scenes. And I have 2 theories on that.
Okay.
One, these are all in the past, which I don't think is the case. But it's possible that all of these scenes are in the past after what's happened with, the squid monster and Dr. Manhattan and all that shit, right? Or these are all just like years in between one another because he's possibly existing outside of time and space in some kind of Ozymandias captivity created by Dr. Manhattan for what he did.
What leads you to those theories, but in particular?
One, because it's very important that we see the newspaper clipping in the beginning where it said Vike confirmed dead.
Mm-hmm.
His company has been taken over by this Asian chick named Tianyu or some shit like that, who is responsible for the Millennium Clock. And he exists in some kind of almost Camelot scenery, like it's, the hills of the UK where the weather's always perfect or some shit. But when he says something about thicker skin, he goes off riding and he rides past this Jolly Roger hung up on a stake or a scythe. And those are apparently like out of bounds signs. Like he's not supposed to traverse past that area. And this character, who is supposedly another Phillips in like a domino mask called the Game Warden, shows up and shoots at his feet and then sends him a letter calling him master. My thoughts are the clones.
And the whole thing's ridiculous, but
Well, remember what Dr. Manhattan said at the end of Watchmen? He was going to go back to Mars and, examine and explore life, possibly even create some.
mm-hmm.
What if all these quote unquote clones are just creations by Dr. Manhattan to keep Vike comfortable and from going completely insane, even though he's in some kind of extra dimensional captivity? And
I just figured it was Vite's, like, we already know Vite has, like, genetic engineering technology. I just assumed it was something like that.
Well, what I inferred from this episode was he was creating a spacesuit almost, right? Because he had an oxygen tank hooked up to it. It was almost airtight. He made sure to seal
Yeah.
the helmet on. And his answer to the clone android, whatever it was, freezing, was to kick it for a while until deciding it needed thicker skin. So the catapult that we're shown that is in development and being used, I think is inferred to be to be designed to try and traverse dimensions or planes of dimension. Basically, my thought is that Mike's trying to escape.
Okay.
That's just a theory that I have based on the information that we got from these episodes that we've seen, and like the way he's acting is erratic, like he's been isolated for a long time, right?
Right.
And it seems that his only company are multiple clones of this one male and one female. And we've seen 3 supposed anniversary celebrations. So, Dr. Manhattan doesn't really exist within time and space. So, even though it could be flashbacks, Adrian Veidt could have aged 50, 60 years in the span of a year in Dr. Manhattan's Torment, right? But it's also 100% confirmed that this is Adrian Veidt in this episode. It's the first time that we're confirmed that this is Ozymandias, and it also pays off with his old ass donning the Ozymandias costume. Because
unless you went to IMDb to look up the actors and stuff, and it said Jeremy Irons, Adrian Veidt.
Yeah. But this episode, in episode, confirms that it's Adrian Veidt.
Yes.
But the thing that I appreciate is that, when we get him in his costume, it is shown that even though this is supposedly the 3rd anniversary or the 3rd year where we're checking in on Adrian Veidt, because let's think about it. We're watching a show called Watchmen. One of the most important themes in Watchmen was the clock, the time, how many minutes till midnight. So we have to assume that every instance of time in this series is important, right?
Right.
So, Q, what's going on, buddy? How's it going? Watchmen is completely racist propaganda. I 100% agree. The show is, at least. Except this episode is pretty good. But, yeah, welcome to the show. I've just been drolling on and on. I didn't even look over at the chat, and I'm sorry for that, guys. I have notes.
I haven't been watching it either.
I have notes, and they seem to kind of be carrying the show a little bit. I don't know. It's just boring. It's just terrible. You guys seem to be sticking around. Church
they're always sticking around in the chat.
I mean, I'm the building. That counts for something.
Yeah,
but
it's true.
Anyway, speaking of racist propaganda, no, I don't know. I think there's something weird going on with Ozymandias. We don't know how time is affected on Mars, but we're given the inference that there's a contract and he's in voluntary exile. So that could mean this is taking place in the present and he's not really dead. But why are we getting yearly updates or multiple anniversaries of, and anniversaries of what? We don't know what this is the anniversary of. I mean, I'm left to assume it's the anniversary of him saving the world. But the regular story isn't taking place over multiple years. I mean, we've crossed like a week, right?
Yeah, I mean,
But again, that could be another
to
lost
me
thing,
it
right?
seems like, yeah, to me the anniversary thing seems to be some sort of programming in the clone's brain. Like, and we're not, and we are seeing this kind of in time with what's going on in the main story, and that's like something they do every single day.
I don't think so because we've gone through more than 3 days, I would think. Because, I mean, let's think about it. There's been a jet ride, a guy has died and made it to his funeral. Um, I mean, there's definitely been more than three calendar days that have passed in this show.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
It's
I'm just saying I'm going to
the
keep
whole
my
thing
mind
is
open.
weird.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my mind open as to what's going on with Ozymandias. Like, I feel like this is kind of another lost twist where
Yeah,
we're getting several years worth of history of Ozymandias. Like, he's so focused and single minded that he gets an idea, and I assume that this whole catapult and suit idea was about a half a year in. So he's so focused, he perfects this one idea, no matter how long it takes, within the confines of whatever quote unquote agreement that he signed. So,
yeah.
but yeah,
I don't know.
weird shit going on with
The
Ozymandias, who is confirmed as Ozymandias, is the basic pretense of all this, right?
Yeah, yeah. The I will say the Vite storyline is definitely the most interesting part of this show so far.
Well, I think a lot of people will just accredit that to the fact that Jeremy Irons is apparently fantastic at what he does. I don't know what
Yeah,
that is except confuse the fuck out of people, but if you're good at something, get paid for it, right?
yeah. I mean, he is a very very good actor. He can really dramatize a scene. I think he's actually I think he's a Shakespearean actor, like from the Royal Shakespearean Company. That's why he like talks in that certain like overemphasized way.
Hmm. Well, after the whole Ozymandias scene, which again ends in the payoff of him dressing up like Ozymandias again and supposedly going out to quote unquote hunt for what is implied to be the game warden, right? That's what I took away from
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Um, and then we cut to like the press release that Mayor Keene was doing. And that's what you were talking about earlier, so go ahead.
Yeah, and this is where he definitely comes across as a sleaze, basically, for lack of a better term.
Oh,
Like
where
he's definitely up to something.
well, he admits that he knows that the Russians are building an intrinsic field generator, which for those of you guys paying attention was the device that turned John Osterman into Dr. Manhattan in the original Watchmen comic. But he brushes over that to say that his goal and his focus is Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he's not leaving, implying that he wouldn't even accept the presidency until things are resolved here. But we know from his earlier discussion with Angela that his entire goal is to become president of the United States after Redford.
Yeah, and he almost kind of has a like Hillary Clinton vibe to him. Like he'll do anything to get in power,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that. But um, then we have the scene where uh, Laurie confronts Angela in the mausoleum. I suppose they're trying to figure out how the Rorschach agent got into the funeral, and it was because he tunneled in through the mausoleum. And Angela again expresses her distaste for vigilantes. Again, all the time through this episode, we're getting more and more bits of her hero joke, which I'm not going to recite because I probably can't, and I didn't write it all down in order. But again, it just ends in her making reference to being the little girl that threw the brick up at the beginning, and the brick comes down and kills actual God, implying, how clever she thinks she is and how powerful, quote
Yeah.
unquote, she is.
Mm-hmm.
But she confronts Angela, aka Night Sister, about Captain Judd's robes and all of that shit, and basically drops the fact that, she knows all about all of this woman's secrets, and she pretty much hates people that consider themselves the quote unquote good guys. Um, this is also the part where she's like, yeah, we were going to dig him up tomorrow discreetly and give him a toxicology report and all that shit. And the scene ends framing Laurie Blake in the lens of the knockoff Night Owl glasses, which again harkens back to the original Watchmen, where the Night Owl glasses frame Dan and Laurie
Mm-hmm.
when they're just about to go back into costume and have one last caper. Uh, the end is.
Yeah. Now,
Go ahead.
and well, this mausoleum scene, I think, kind of really encapsulates kind of what I was saying about how much better of an actor whoever this chick is that plays Laurie, which I'm going to look up while I'm doing this, because she says the line like, doesn't she, isn't it like I eat people who think they're heroes for breakfast, or
I eat
it's
good
something
guys
to that
for
effect.
breakfast.
Yeah, or yeah, I eat good guys for breakfast, and then instead of making it kind of like a dramatic moment, right? Where they kind of like have a bit of a stare down. I forget what Angela says. She just goes like, "Ooh," like
Yeah,
like she's 7 years old on the playground and being,
taunted or whatever.
taunted. It was so stupid. It completely broke the scene.
Yeah, it was kind of cringy. And
Like,
then she like pours her
yeah,
coffee out in the hole or some shit. Like, really? That's evidence, bitch.
yeah.
Like, she's a really bad
It,
cop. I don't know if
yeah,
you've noticed
she
that or
really
not.
is. Yeah, she's a horrible cop.
um,
But it totally just threw the drama of that scene off
well,
completely.
well, let
It should
me
have been
go ahead.
it should have been a shot reverse shot, I think they call it, of the two of them and kind of like slowly going back and forth, like, slowly zooming in on both of their faces kind of while they have a stare down with like some light music swelling in the background. That it should just cut there. That should have been the end of the
You
episode.
mean like a soap opera stare down?
Yeah, kind of, but not as. If
With it,
anything, it was worse the way they did it.
but I only have one more note, and then we'll go into the general discussion. Um,
See, Jean Elizabeth Smart is the actress who plays
Jean
her.
Jean Elizabeth Smart. What else has she been in?
Well, let's see. Frasier, Sweet Home Alabama, 24.
Huh.
The
Oh,
Brady Bunch movie from 1995.
24, the series?
Yeah.
That's probably where I saw her then. Anyway,
Let's see.
let me get through my last note. Um,
Yeah, go for it.
all right. So we talked about the intermittent cuts of Laurie telling this joke. Well, that's pretty much where the scene or the episode kind of ends. That's the ending scene, which I think puts it chronologically last. But she finishes telling her joke and she makes a few final comments to Doctor Manhattan messaging system booth or whatever, and just says something along the lines of humans aren't worth giving a shit about anyway, which not only shows her loathing for superheroes, but human beings in general.
Mm-hmm.
And then she leaves the booth, and before she can get to the end of the end of the sidewalk and walk across the road to get to her car or whatever, the car that was seemingly the car that Will was loaded into before it was pulled up by a spaceship with a magnet is like tossed back down to Earth right in front of Laurie. And she starts laughing hysterically. And I couldn't help but draw some correlation between that and the brick metaphor that she made in the joke. That God threw the brick back kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then she looks up in the clouds and Mars kind of like does this poof that
Yeah.
I could only
This
assume
weird.
was activity on Mars by Dr. Manhattan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it felt like that it was implied that he got her message and, like, threw the car down in front of her. Almost like an offering, because he worked very logically or whatever, and that obviously got something to do with her case because of the wheelchair Will guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It was weird. It
Yeah,
was a really odd
but the laughing
scene. But
hysterically
yeah, I
and
kind of got the same thing. Anyways.
every wisecrack that Lori makes is her father leaking through her to her conscience. Yeah, and I made that
Mm-hmm.
point earlier about the correlation between her making a joke and being the comedian's daughter and taking his last name. Like I feel like all of that kind of correlates and can only be attributed to the writing and good writing at that. That Laurie, the Silk Spectre, 30 years later, is the leader of an anti-vigilante task force for the FBI, and she basically the comedian who hates mask.
Yeah. I can. I definitely see where they're going with that.
But the reason that I felt like this episode was better, like overall, and the end, the grand scheme of things,
There was less Angela.
that, but this episode introduces a character that opposes the status quo that you assume you were supposed to be rooting for in previous episodes. So, 3 episodes into a 12-issue limited series, our expectations have been subverted twice. Right? Because,
Yeah.
personally, you start out the first episode and you're rooting for the cops because they're chasing down the bad guys who killed one of their own. Until you realize
Are
that
you really rooting for the cops though?
hear me out. Until you realize that
Okay.
once the cops get a hold of their bad guy, they, use brute force, whatever, and then,
Mm-hmm.
abuse their privilege as an officer. Well, you stop rooting for the police, and then an episode goes to and from, and then you find out the FBI is also looking at the police like, yeah, you shouldn't wear a mask. You're no better than the guys that I bust every day. And you're like, okay, so now I have someone new to root for. Which, again, kind of pulls me back to saying that this is very much written and shot like Lost, because this 100% this reminds me of the episode where we're introduced to Locke. John Locke, the guy that could walk when he crashed on the island even though he was in a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah.
This reminds me of his episode on Lost.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
Well, it was a character-driven episode with a little bit of sprinkling of the team in the background, but for the most part, the entire episode focused on the one character.
Oh, okay.
And that's what this felt like to me. And again, because it was a legacy character from the Watchmen comic, it made it feasible to be an episode of a TV show that is deemed the sequel to the Watchmen. Whereas the first episodes didn't really cross the threshold of what I felt like was deserving of that title. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Almost like if this character would have been introduced in the first episode, the entire judgment that I have about the series would be at least slightly different.
Yeah, definitely. I did like the way they portrayed her 30 years in the future, and the actress did a very, very good job with that, kind of showing her, she's kind of world weary, kind of just sick of everybody's shit.
Not only that, but it also showed her being kind of weak in the sense that she misses being together with John to the point that she sends him messages, even if they are coded to, portray the fact that she's supposedly smarter than the rest of them.
Yeah,
now,
and she has a giant blue dildo with detachable balls for some reason.
In case you want to put the balls in your mouth, and I disavow myself. But no, the last thing that I wanted to bring up was at the end of her joke, she kind of recites the end of the Pagliazzi joke in the original Watchmen. Man goes to doctor and tells him how depressed he is, how sad he is, and he says, "Wait, I've got the best cure. There's a great clown in town. You go see him, he'll make you happy." And he's like, "Doc, I am that clown." Roll snare drum, curtains, good joke. And that's how it's written in Rorschach's journal. Well, that's how Laurie tells the joke to Dr. Manhattan. So, again, as somebody who kind of has to take all these things in full stride, we have to assume that there's a possibility that because she's using a Rorschach-ism, that she may be connected with the 7th Cavalry.
See, now what I'm kind of starting to wonder through our discussion, and either this would be too obvious, or the writers just aren't going to do it because the writers are raging leftists. I don't know. I don't know who the creative team behind this
they basically are pretty much all raging leftists at this point, or allies.
Yeah, but if you think about it, during the FBI briefing, the young guy has like images of Rorschach's journal, and the head guy is just like, "Yeah, get that off the screen. That's not important." And he's like, "But it kind of is, because this is like their motivation, so we should look into this." He's like, "Nah, stop living back in the 80s.
Right.
So it makes me wonder if like these powerful people, right, uh, the mayor, whoever else might be even behind them pulling some strings, actually
Yeah.
like changed some of the pages, like actually to manipulate them to make the racial tensions worse.
It would be interesting if we got that story, but I don't think that that's part of this overarching storyline.
Yeah, it's probably
Because
not.
honestly,
But
I
that would make
well,
these first few episodes like okay, if that's what they were to go with it,
well, hear me out.
then these episodes would be better
Well, well,
if that is what they're doing.
well, hear me out though. I think that the Seventh Cavalry is honestly kind of a diversion, and I think that by episode 6 or 7, they're going to be a nothing burger. That's my prediction.
Okay.
I
I mean, yeah,
I think that
probably.
by 6 or 7, there's going to be a bigger a bigger bad that's going to take the focus.
Yeah.
But
Like I said, they're probably not doing it that way, but it would be cool if they were doing it that way, make it kind of like a political conspiracy thriller.
well, they kind of already started
Instead
that.
of
They've started that setup with the raining octopi and the question: do you think that the squid problem is a government conspiracy?
yeah,
Like,
okay, make it a compelling
no. I'm saying
conspiracy thriller.
they've set the stage for something like that to be a thing, with the fact that they've already set up the idea that there's a
Okay.
conspiracy being covered up that most people are
Yeah.
aware of and just don't talk about, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to point
But I
out
think that
that.
was
Go ahead.
I think that's more supposed to be like you know, like that kid at the end of Watchmen did publish the journal, and now
Well,
these people are taking that published version of the journal
right, but the thing
and
is
using it as a playbook.
there,
But
there's
if that published version had been tampered with,
well,
would to manipulate them would be way more interesting than the writers of the show just completely changing things and adding stuff into there that he never actually said.
no, because here's the thing: like any kind of cultish ideology is going to either read into or rewrite any kind of work they need to fit their cause. It's been done with the Bible for millennia. Let's not, be let's not bear false witness here. Like the Bible is the most altered piece of text in human history.
Yeah, I mean,
So, I mean, if you want to use Rorschach's journal as a white nationalist manifesto, you can take the core outline of his ideas and replace the words whores and politicians with race traitors and N bombs, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got your manifesto.
yeah, and that's what would make me think it would be interesting if some more powerful person had changed that in order to manipulate people into becoming
Well, maybe
more
that's.
radicalized, you know, like the classic
May,
like divide and conquer sort of thing.
well, here's the thing. Let's look back to the Watchmen comic, and I before we get there, let me just point out it is what it is 8 minutes before Nicky Rackett starts his show, and we should finish up. But I
Yeah.
just wanted to point out that I made notes, and we actually had a full show without having to fumble for anything. So you're welcome. I'm talking to you here,
You know,
not
yeah.
the audience.
I mean,
I thank the audience. You're welcome. Because fuck you. I made notes. I would rattle papers if I had them.
just rattle your screen back and forth.
No. But, anyway. What I was getting at is that with this series, based on everything that we've seen up to this point, about time, lol. What? Wait a minute. I forget what they're talking about because I've had entirely too much scotch for this episode. What are they?
Why, over in the chat?
Yeah, what are they reacting to? I forget. But it's
These
about
balls
time
would
that
make
I.
me testy.
No. It's about time that I made notes and actually carried the episode. I think is what they're
Oh.
going for. You know, the about time that I did the work, but whatever. F you guys, I do all the work. Ayrton doesn't do anything. He just shows up and doesn't go on strike. But
No, I'm on strike when we're not on air.
oh, okay. Oh, you're on strike when we're not on there. Fantastic. But no, all in all, like, as far as this episode is concerned, I think that the show might be going in a slightly different direction just to subvert expectations. I don't think that we're going to see a complete and utter turnaround. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, probably not.
I skimmed over things that I mentioned earlier and felt like didn't really have any more depth to them. But like I said, I think this show is going a different direction like it said it was in episode, like in the first episode when we talked about it. But it's a 12 episode series and no one's been able to review anything more than the first 6 episodes yet. And one of my fears, honestly, is that somebody's going to create the ending that they think we want based on the first 6 episodes worth of reviews and the reaction to them. Kind of like Game of Thrones, the final season. And that scares me a little bit. I don't have any confirmation that the entire season is recorded yet, and just in editing.
I mean,
so
as long as they don't have Starbucks cups laying around in places they shouldn't be,
or water bottles. Maybe have the main character warg into a dragon for fuck's sake. But
I mean, one thing I hope they don't. I hope they keep Dr. Manhattan on Mars just in the background. Like, don't bring him down like for the last 2 episodes, like for the big finale to do some crazy shit to save the day. Leave him on Mars.
Maybe have him do something, but don't show him doing it. Just have the effects of what he did shown.
Yeah.
I mean, you still...
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah. Or, you know, obviously, like I said, if it turns out that he's the one that's trapped Ozymandias in some kind of time-space vortex where it passes years on end in a short amount of time, then... I mean, all bets are off in that regard, right?
Yeah.
But
I just hope they leave him on Mars just in the background.
yeah, well, leave Dr. Manhattan on Mars. But I kind of want Ozymandias to get out and fuck shit up for everybody, right? And
that could be fun.
And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if the psychiatrist's son shows up as a real Rorschach, because the psychiatrist's son in DC Comics is like the little black kid that grows up to
Hmm.
be the new Rorschach in DC. So if he just kind of like made an appearance and set that cementing tie together to this being what occurs in Doomsday Clock, then they might actually make something out of this show. As long as they don't jump the shark with it, obviously. But
Yeah, and that would be an interesting twist if he like reveals himself.
like as the new Rorschach, who
Right.
also went against the Seventh Cavalry for using the Rorschach mantra or mantle, right?
Yeah, or some just if they reveal him at all, and then like show him to be a black man, like kind of maybe have him start working in the shadows, as Rorschach did
Right.
in
Well, for all
Watchmen.
we know, he could have been one of the protesters that we saw in this episode because there were several scenes of protest going on, right?
There were. That's true.
So, I mean, it could be a modern day commentary for Rorschach carrying a sign around.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're almost over budget. Nikki Racket's probably about to go live. I need to get some sleep. You need to get some sleep. We've talked about this long enough. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for coming out, watching, liking, subscribing, sharing, all that good stuff. Um, Matt Christie, we really appreciate it. Novel Bro, Fat Neck, everybody. I just hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a good night, and we will see you later this week, whether it be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, something like that. We will keep you updated in the Discord and on Twitter. And everybody go check out Nikki Rackets. Subscribe to the Kill Stream over on D Live. Make sure you catch everything Mediker's doing. Follow him on BitChute, all that nonsense. Check out the links in the description. Blah, 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 blah. We really appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.
Good night, everybody.